Come into our house of hope and love, of music and celebration. Come into our house of peace and justice, of wholeness and healing. We welcome the certain and the seeking, the lifers and the newcomers, the beloved and the brokenhearted. All of you can find a home here at Throop, where we go love the world from the heart of Pasadena and from the heart of our homes. Hello to our friends that are joining us on live stream this morning. We are celebrating Easter morning with some of our very good friends from the UUs of Santa Clarita Valley, and we are also welcoming online our friends from UU of Kern County. And we are delighted to welcome the worship team from UU of Santa Clarita Valley. We have with us today Reverend Megan Visser. Yeah. we have Scott Rowe, the music director, Monica Bowser, Nick Schutz on percussion back here. Yes. We have Greg Klein. Wait, from UU Santa Cruz Valley or from Throop? He goes to both places. And our very own Megan Hawks, musician and residence from Throop. Yes, and we have all of you who rolled out of bed this morning for Easter. This morning we journey through the Christian Easter story. We will begin with Good Friday, sit in the stillness of Holy Saturday, and then finally the celebratory joy of Easter morning. And if you came here today looking for an Easter egg hunt, did you? That will be happening right after the worship service. Lynn Weber is heading that up, and Lynn maybe helped move some of you into the sanctuary. And if you came here today because you heard we were serving mimosas after the service, that's true. I have water though right now, I promise. Those will take place on the back patio immediately following the service, and you can just follow the signs out to the back patio. It is an honor to share Easter Sunday with you, and each one of us is a light in the world, and the flame from our chalice symbolizes and reflects that light.
Our time together in worship is intimately connected with our daily lives. As a symbol of that connection, we light our chalice in love, compassion, and justice.
Out of the earth rises light, rises life, rises spring. May we join with the miracle that is springtime and enter into the life with lightness and joy. Out of the Spirit rises faith, rises hope, rises love. May we join with the miracle that is in the Easter time, and may life call us toward hope and love. Let us resurrect with spring. Let us resurrect with the Spirit. Let us resurrect into new life. And when we gather together this Easter morning.
We light a second candle to honor the ancestors, the land, the people, and ancestors whose lands we now occupy. The land under and around Throop was once, and is still, the home of the Gabrielino Tongva band of Mission Indian people. May this knowledge and awareness lead us into seeking justice and equity for all. We light a third candle, symbolizing our watershed, Firoyo Seco. May the waters continue to nourish life in our communities. We take a moment of silence, holding all of these in our hearts.
of the hallelujah in your heart, turn gently to your neighbor and welcome them into our sacred space. So this morning, Reverend Megan and Greg and I will share a little bit of the Easter story with you all, and Reverend Megan is going to start us off.
So this morning, we are talking about what happens when we feel sad, maybe almost dead inside, and then life calls us on and we feel new and whole again. Have you ever felt that way? If you aren't sure what I mean, let me show you. Can you see this branch? How about over here? I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to see it. Can you see this branch? So perhaps this branch may look like not much. It might look like it is dead, but you see, it is just waiting. Just waiting. And where Throop community do you think that this branch comes from? Aha, yes. Especially here in Pasadena, when so many of our trees have leaves on them year-round, it seems strange to see a branch with not that many leaves, but in fact, it does come from the Throop Learning Garden. And so even though this may look dead, as I said before, it's waiting. This part of the tree, the branch up here, is a bud. And before long, this bud will flower. And soon, it will slowly turn into this. An apple. This, friends, is the story of spring. Have you seen new life coming up around town, in your yards, in your gardens? For a long time, people have been celebrating spring because the land that seemed dead comes to life again. Pagans around the world a long time ago and now celebrate rituals that honor this new life. Some people think that that's why we talk about Easter eggs and bunnies at Easter time, because they have been used as symbols for new life for years and years.
And then right here to my right is another symbol connected with Easter. And how many of you have seen a cross in this exact formation, where it's in a circle and slightly to the... and slightly to the left? Well, this cross, it's really special because it's from our historic Universalist faith. This used to be the Universalist symbol. This cross, it's a little bit left of center, maybe a little bit like some of us in the room feel sometimes, a little left of center. And this symbolized that our beliefs were open, and it symbolized that we were able to find truths in many other religions, and it symbolized that we were ready to welcome people in our doors. It's a symbol of Christianity, of course, and it's a reminder of Jesus, a man who lived a long time ago. He graces our sanctuary in this beautiful stained glass behind me and along both of our aisles here. And of course, Jesus was a Jewish teacher who taught about the power of love. And it's that same kind of all-encompassing love that is at the heart of universalism. And as part of Jesus' message, what are some of the things Jesus taught? You can just yell it out from there, and I'm going to see if I can hear it. Love your neighbor. Heal the sick. Forgiveness. Feed the hungry. Do unto others as you would do unto yourself. And these were radical messages in his day and time. They feel radical in our own day and time, do they not? And so Jesus was really fighting against the empire and against the forces of power and corruption and money. And what happens to people sometimes who fight against power and corruption and money? What do the people in power want to do to those voices? They want to quiet them and shut them down. And Jesus was so powerful in his day that the only way they could quiet him was to kill him. And so you can imagine after his death how sad all of his family and friends and followers felt. They were really devastated because what they had believed so strongly in, they thought it was gone. But you know what his friends did? They didn't give up. They continued to believe in that message. They told stories about him, and they tried to practice what he taught. And because they remembered him in that way, it started to feel like he was with them still.
So, some people believed he came back from the dead. Others didn't. But everyone everyone knew that he lived on in the way his followers remembered him. Life called them on, and they knew hope and love. Now, after the service, you're going to have the opportunity to go outside into the garden for an Easter egg hunt or possibly a sacred mimosa. But when you do, please take a moment to savor the smells, the sounds, the sights, the flowers, the bees, and each other, knowing that you can feel good about each other being there, the other children, the other adults, and know that the beauty of the earth and the comfort of community are here for you always. We honor our Throop connection to the earth and by saying our promise to the planet. It's in your order of service. As members of the family of living beings on earth, we are guided by the Unitarian Universalist principle of respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. We hearts are filled with love for it, eyes nurtured by its beauty, sacred and scarce resources. We promise to nurture the well-being of all life and of the planet itself.
So many of us know this community as our church home. It's a place that holds us through all different times in our life. It holds us through times of despair and through times of great joy. And the last 2 years in particular, it served as a connector when we were needed to stay apart for the safety and well-being for those around us. For those of you that are able to make a financial contribution today, we thank you so much for doing that. You can give online. Those ways are in your order of service, or they're in the worship chat, or if you're in the room, offering plates will be passed momentarily. Thank you so much for all the ways you support our congregation. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Alone, wild bird in lofty flight is still with thee, nor leaves thy sight, and I am thine, I rest in thee, great Spirit, come and rest in me. The ends of earth are in thy hand, the seas dark, deep, and far off land, Great Spirit, come and rest in me.
And as we give thanks and gratitude for the offering, there are words we say together that are in your order of worship. For the ministries of the church and our community, we bless our offering with love and hope.
Our responsive reading this morning is number 622 in the gray hymnal entitled Good Friday. And if you are following along with a order of service online or on paper, you will find your words in italics and my words in regular text. They brought Jesus to the place of a skull. They crucified him and divided his clothes among them, casting lots to decide what each should take. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. Those who were crucified with him also taunted him. At 3 o'clock, Jesus cried, my God, why have you forsaken me?" causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there? Were you there? Look me up there. You see the skull, rock with eye sockets and a mouth impressed upon it, and above that cliff, and above the cliffside, 3 posts with a beam going across the top third, and in the center post, Jesus. Were you there? Oh, it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. We see Jesus there. He'd been humiliated, betrayed multiple times, and arrested, experienced a trial, but the decision had already been made to crucify him for advocating social disruption. Theologian Michael Joseph Brown said attacks of the existing power structures, especially when it is oppressive, often bring death-dealing retaliation. Were you there? When some Christian congregations gather for Good Friday services, most often you find the lyrics to a song, "Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there?" When they ask, "Were you there?" one interpretation is to say, yes, I was there, to enter the feelings of pain and regret in witnessing the death sentence being carried out upon a man who had healed so many, who had done so many things, just like Reverend Tara shared and you shared during our story, who had been a defender of the most marginalized. I tremble, tremble, tremble. And there are 21st century versions, retellings of the meaning of the Good Friday story that run quite a range. There's a retelling that calls upon human sinfulness. We're told we, humans, brought death into the world, or that only a divine sacrifice might break us free of sin in time to find heaven. Or that Jesus knew since childhood that he would end up crucified, or that he made a conscious choice in that moment to die. Now, none of these versions are the universalist version, and you may have already guessed that, but I thought I might reassure you amid our trembling. I think I prefer the version of Good Friday in which we feel the ancient communities suffering in a way that we are able to feel with the real human community of Jesus' followers and family, of God's family. Reverend Peter Lockhart writes that here in this moment, they beheld the pain and suffering of someone they lost, someone they loved. They mourned for him. They sought to comfort him with their presence. They may have wondered at the sheer brutality of the event and the callous behavior of the soldiers. They also could have wondered about their own mortality and risk for even being nearby. Standing alongside these people with hearts breaking at the suffering. Some congregations with crosses at the front of their sanctuaries may look up at the cross wondering, where is God in the midst of these terrible things? Where is God in the midst of suffering? Where is God in the moment of death? Were you there, God? We heard Jesus ask God, "Why have you forsaken me?" Does God abandon humanity in times of incredible brutality and violence? No, we will come to learn. In the crucifixion story, we receive the tension between the human life before us dying and the divine presence, leaving us wondering and fearful. We can imagine ourselves among the women sitting at Jesus' feet as he died. Did they know what was to come by Sunday as they tried to understand his final teachings from that cliffside? Were you there on that day, a day that stays with us? As Unitarian Universalists, I am sure that we hold crucifixion in a variety of ways, or maybe this is the first moment we've thought about it in a while. Does Jesus' death end domination or submission? No. Were you there to hear and see the threat to anyone who might follow in Jesus' political footsteps and rise against the power of greed or empire, maybe even in our society now? Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker shared her inability to reconcile the suffering during our lives with this idea that we only find salvation after death. Her and Rita Nakashima Brock wrote a book about atonement, about telling their own stories about surviving violence and the scores of people they encountered in their ministries who had experienced abuse or violence but had stayed silent. We each may have our own stories of where we were, of being there in witness of suffering, of pain or desolation, including our own. That is Good Friday work, the work of witnessing. Steady witnesses end the hidden life of violence by bringing it into public attention. They can help restore souls fragmented by violence and accompany us to healing. Perhaps we can ask, were you there when Jesus was crucified, not to romanticize a death, but to bring us toward healing, to urge us to go public about systemic forms of evil or suffering, refusing to allow violence to operate in secret? Universalism rejects the idea of a hell that comes after death because, in part, hell exists on this planet in some places, in some ways, in some times. How could we describe a crucifixion as anything but hell on earth? How could we describe war as anything but hell? Universalist preacher Hosea Ballou said that Jesus' crucifixion didn't save us, but Jesus' embodiment of creative love and justice did. It was the way he lived and led by example. Paradise is also available in the here and now, manifest in beauty, in budding branches, marked by relationships of justice and care. It is something all of us, whole communities, can work to create. We close Good Friday with the words from the liturgists at Infleshed. We will not look to the cross for what saves us. Let us refuse to glorify empire. Lands and peoples, spirits and futures, creatures and communities. Blessed is this flesh of God. We remember, we weep, we remain followers of defiant love.
When Mary through the garden solemn lilies, white and slim, these also stood and wept for him.
After the confusion and chaos of Jesus' arrest, after his crucifixion, after his body was placed in the tomb, after the previous day filled with stress, despair, uncertainty, Mary and Jesus' other friends and family and followers awakened into the stillness and silence of Saturday morning. They awakened into Shabbat, the Jewish Sabbath, a day set aside for rest, for prayer, for blessings, a day to think and read and to offer praises for the beauty of creation. As Mary began her day, silence accompanied her. Grief swallowed her whole as time stretched out in front of her. With no work, no chores to distract her, with no sound of any bird to lift her spirit, Mary sat in the stillness, her heart torn into pieces. On this day, Holy Saturday, a pause between the despair of Good Friday and the joy of Easter morning, there is only painful silence. The joy is here, though, already. Thank you, Fiona. After the agony of Friday, Mary awakens to her loss and she cries out, "Why? What now? How did this happen?" And she waits, but there's no answer. For any of you that have wandered through your own field of grief, that silence may be familiar. If you have wandered through the grief of the death of a loved one, divorce, a medical condition that you never thought would be your own, those same questions have risen up in your heart. Why? How can this be? Why now? Why me? And you may have heard only silence in response. There is no answer to all-encompassing grief. And we live through our own Holy Saturday season of life, caught between the despair of what was and no way to know, not really, when or if an Easter morning is awaiting us. And in the silence and in the stillness, we sit and wait and cry and struggle and wonder why now, because nothing had prepared us for that great kind of loss. Jan Richardson, poet, writes about the blessings found in the silence of Holy Saturday. She writes, "I have no cause to linger beside this place of death. No reason to keep vigil where life has left, and yet I cannot bring myself to cleave myself from here. Can only pray that in this waiting might yet be a blessing, and this grieving yet a blessing, this stone yet a blessing, this silence yet a blessing." When we are living through the Holy Saturday of our lives, it is so hard to find meaning in it, let alone the blessings. And that field of grief can seem so wide, we don't know if we are going to make it to the other side. And so we do the only thing we can, which which is settle into it, and the grief becomes a companion of sorts. And it might be at that point when the silence and the stillness is so vast and wide and deep, it could be there that we begin to find a little bit of ourselves, slowly and oh so tentatively. By the time the sun went down on Holy Saturday, Mary was ready to return to the tomb, knowing in her heart that Jesus' message would live on through her. And we too return. There in your grief, you awaken one morning and you're not sure how it happened, but you find yourself living in the light of Easter morning. And out of the silence, you hear the words, "Love will return again."
Now the green blade riseth from the buried grave, wheat that in the dark earth many days has lain. Love lives again, that with the dead has been. Love is come again, like wheat that springeth green. In the grave they laid him, love by hatred slain, thinking that never he would wake again. Laid in the earth like grain that sleeps unseen. Love is come again, like wheat that springeth green. When our hearts are wintry, grieving or in pain, love's touch can call us back to life again. Fields of our hearts that dead and bare have been, love is come again, like wheat that springeth green. Love is come again, like wheat that springeth green. Love is come again, like wheat that springeth green.
On the first day of the week, at early dawn, they came to the tomb, saying, "Who will roll away the stone from the entrance to the tomb?" They looked up and saw that the stone had already been rolled back. And on the right, they saw a young man. They were alarmed, but the man said to them, "Why do you seek the living among the dead?" So they went and they fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them. And they said nothing, for they were afraid. Why are we afraid of what we don't know or recognize? What blinds us to recognition of the possible within and outside of ourselves? In telling the resurrection of Jesus, it's said that he represented himself in physical form when he walked among his disciples, his friends, his loved ones once again. However, each time he appeared, as described in the four Gospels, it was a surprise to all, and each time his presence initially denied as being real. Surprising? Mary Magdalene initially mistakes him for a gardener. And in John 20:25, Thomas insists, "Unless I see the mark of nails in his hands and put my finger in the mark of the nails and my hand in his side, I will not believe. And well, Jesus invites him to do just that. Only then does Thomas believe. But what prevented these people from believing that Jesus was really standing in front of them? In the book Wisdom Jesus, Cynthia Burgo suggests that Jesus is present in physical density only insofar as it's necessary to match the density of doubt that is blocking their view. For example, Mary need only to see him to be reassured. So he appears to her initially as a vision, then corporeally.